Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Carolyn Lovewell, and I am here with my friend Rita. She is an initiate of Sleepover Mystery School. And we're at the Mahasiddha Jamboree, which is the yearly reunion of all the Psalms cohorts. So we have 3 Sleepover Mystery School cohorts right now at a beautiful campground in the mountains of West Virginia, and it's just such a delightful experience. And I wanted to sit down with Rita because she's had such a beautiful journey arc unfolding with the Mystery School. And Rita, tell us a little bit about, so listeners at home, Rita listens to the podcast. Mm-hmm. Is that how you found us?
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time commenter.
Yeah.
Very happy to be here. And I found your work around about end of 2022 or so,
mm-hmm.
so pretty recently. And I had, before then, been very interested in the mind. I have a PhD in psychology. That's what I do for my day job at university level. And I'd been spending a lot of time in yoga and meditation. I started getting into a little bit more of like the Tantra, how do you digest emotions? And at the same time, I was learning a lot about somatic processing and how we can sort of resolve deep trauma within ourselves through these means of, dealing with the unconscious. And so I read your book, and in the back of the book it said something about you can join Electric Yes, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. What's that all about? So I joined Electric Yes, and then I started listening to the podcast just like hour after hour after hour, just digesting it all in, because the way that you present these esoteric concepts in a way that's very much down to earth and in a way that, real living beings do it, made it feel very approachable for me.
Yay. I'm so glad that it felt approachable. Yes. Yay. And so you were in Electric Yes, so doing some of the theurgical practices in Electric Yes.
Yeah. So in Electric Yes, there's a bunch of sort of more practical, magical kind of things around business development. But then there's also this wacky, weirdo drawing stars in the air, theurgical stuff, and that was the part that was like, oh, that's super cool. I want to know more about that. So I started doing those every morning in my sort of normal meditation practice, and over time it just kind of kept pulling me deeper and deeper in. And then the opening occurred for this year of Psalms, and I was like, well, that's the next step. So I went ahead and did that, and here we are at the end of the 9 months, and I can't say that I know precisely what happened, right?
Something happened. I think something happened. Yeah. Well, so it is always tricky to talk about because we can't tell people the details of the Mystery School. But maybe you could tell folks a little bit about like how you were feeling before you underwent Sleepover Mystery School and how you're feeling now.
Yeah. So before starting, I was a lot more like contracted, a lot more focused on my own, how I create things in the world and how I am failing to create things in the world. And going through the process, I had already spent many years digesting different layers of my own shadow. So I was like, I probably have this pretty well sorted. Nah, there's plenty left. And so, now after having gone through this additional layer, there's more of a sense of spaciousness, more of a sense of expansiveness, and like also a bit more willingness to just sort of like try stuff. And, maybe it won't work out, but that's okay.
Yeah, I liked what you said about you'd done a lot of work on shadow integration stuff, and then you found with Psalms there was more still to be there. That is one of the main ways that I think about the school. Sorry, there's somebody's driving like a motorcycle or something. It's loud AF. I don't know if the podcast microphone is picking it up or not, but it's fun. West Virginia, yay. I think of it as like that the rituals help make unconscious stuff conscious, like really bring deep stuff to the surface. Do you think that was part of what
Very
you experienced?
Very much so. Well, and as I said before this, I was spending more time in yoga meditation spaces, which are pretty much the best approximation that we as people in Western cultures can get to those traditions. And I got quite deep in there, but there is just this sort of fundamental mismatch because of the way that we still have these myths in Western culture that are operating way in the background of our sort of mental programming that we're not even aware of. And the big ones are, you know, the myth of original sin and the fall. And then from that, this myth that God hates us and we have to make it up to him. And we never really can. Some of the work that I do in the university has been comparing different cultural traditions and how they have their own sort of belief sets that sort of form their own sort of programming behind the scenes. And in these Eastern traditions where yoga and meditation comes from, those beliefs aren't there. They're just not present.
Yeah.
So there's not this belief that like we are fundamentally bad in the same way. And so, you know, you'll get into this. I did a lot of Vipassana, those 10-day silent meditation retreats. And the style that I did was the Goenka school. And he'd have these long Dhamma talks at the end of the day. And he'd say different things like, oh, you know that you don't actually love people, you just love yourself. And you can't fully love anyone else because you're only in love with yourself. And there's this sort of constantly being in conditional love with everyone. So when he said that the first time I heard it, I actually broke out in tears because I realized I don't love myself. I hate myself, which means that I must be actually hateful of everyone around me, even though I'm trying so hard being a bully to myself to be better. And actually, it's only making things worse. And so that level of like mismatch between those sort of worldviews was a place where I was hitting a barrier that I couldn't go deeper. But coming into these funny stars and whatever that we draw is much more from the Western background. And so it's much more of a natural fit to the way that our sort of really deep programming operates to alleviate those layers that are still way down at the bottom.
Oh, I'm so glad that you found that to be the case. I really found that to be the case for me too, because I've spent, you know, thousands of hours in Buddhist meditation and Hindu kirtan things. I don't know, whole lot of hours. and yeah, I remember I read very similar to the story you just told. I read something about, you know, a Tibetan Buddhist monk was teaching loving kindness meditation, and people were, and he's, you know, recommending to people that the easiest is to start with is yourself, recommending to a bunch of Westerners, and the Westerners were like, we all fucking hate ourselves. What are you talking about? And the dude was like, did not understand.
Yeah.
And I do just think that is the case, exactly what you're like. Nobody quite gets self-hating alienation like Westerners. It's expressed. Sometimes I wonder if it's a chicken or the egg phenomenon. It's like, does our mythology just express our self-hate and amplify it? Because it certainly is the case, the story of original sin. That's something that I've been thinking about so much lately, about how most of the people that I know identify as, you know, they would say I'm spiritual, not religious, or I'm pagan, or I'm a Buddhist, I'm a yogi. But I'm like, you're permeated with the Judeo-Christian tradition, and that's my strong belief, and that's part of why we offer Psalms the way that we do in Electric Yes, is because I really feel that there is something major to the Western esoteric tradition that is like, this is the tantric, deep, loving, mystical means of working with this inherited cultural baggage that we have that is efficient for opening the heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, from my perspective in academic psychology, meditation and psychedelics are getting to be more and more of a talking point. So many papers getting published on this now, and it's becoming big business. They're making it more and more of a therapeutic thing. But again, they have to go into these other traditions where they don't share the worldview, and there are things that are just not making the translation. And as this continues to grow, we do stand the risk of potentially doing broader cultural harm because we're just taking bits and pieces without having the appropriate additional ecosystem around the beliefs.
Yeah, it's always so interesting to me how, like, you know, like Buddhist mindfulness, which has like obviously Buddhism is not a theistic tradition, but it does definitely include like deities and like devotional practices, how like that like mindfulness practice got just like lifted up, and like American corporations were like, thank you, we will take this to increase our productivity. Just like made it into a very like stripped down secular thing that
that is actually used to bring us back into the machine rather than liberate us, which is what it was originally intended to do.
Yeah, it's quite a deep perversion there.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, God does have a very sick sense of humor.
Yeah. So, okay. So finding some layers releasing and opening up through the mystery school. And, so maybe I would love to hear you talk some about this, Rita, about like how, so you've seen in your professional life how the kind of Western trying to take the Eastern approach to meditation doesn't necessarily result in like the deep freedom and opening that it's maybe meant to. Do you see, has the work that you've done with theurgy made you see psychological possibilities, ramifications with theurgy, or what's been alive for you lately? What connections have been being made?
So one of the sort of opening questions that I had when I joined Psalms, I kind of the only way that I could let my psyche actually fully surrender into it was to treat it as a research project. So I'm doing participant observation in the theurgy to see what changes in my mind that I can then describe this change to the rest of the world. And what I saw was, again, this like, can you repeat the question? I think I got lost.
sort of just like what's come alive for you, like what connections are being made in your mind between what you've experienced with Psalms and theurgy and like what your professional, understandings are.
Right. That part is still very unfolding. Thank you so much for your beautiful motorcycles. What has been emerging for me is just more patience. Like I was just always fighting against time, fighting against the system, fighting against how things were. And this sort of theurgical approach, because it has this deep medicine for that fundamental wrongness of the world and you in the world, it started to give me a little bit more space to just be like, okay, well, this is how things are right now. And then that gives me more space to get curious about, well, okay, where's that step for me to take into the next piece? I do see that potentially theurgy could have another sort of layer of therapeutic effect that could potentially be an alternative that would be more accessible than having to sit in ceremony with someone who may or may not actually have been trained in a tradition. And it may be more approachable for people who already have this sort of like package of a mixed ambivalent relationship with the Judeo-Christian experience. Because a lot of the spiritual, not religious people, I mean, it's a growing demographic, and there's this just like deep, almost psychological need. Like there's this almost a hungry ghost that's just searching for the numinous. And if you keep looking outside of your own culture for that numinous, you're never going to quite find it, because it really does come from within you. And if it's something that's coming from within your deeper cultural lineage, there is still more of that resonance and connection there.
That has really been my experience. So this is something, so it connects to something that I want to ask you about, but I'll just share, probably people have shared this before, like something that I was always amazed with is, like I said, I've done many, many hours of Buddhist style meditation and participation in like Hindu type bhakti stuff. And I've like never encountered a Buddha in my dreams. I never encountered Krishna in my dreams. And meanwhile, I started doing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and like shit started popping off. Like right away, I started getting like having these encounters with magicians. I had encounters with John Dee in my dreams. I had encounters with Aleister Crowley, encounters with David Bowie. And after the first round of magicians, as I went deeper in the magic, because I got encouragement from those magicians in the tradition, I started encountering gods, like Ra-Hor Kuit, Dionysus, like a straight up, like, theophanic revelations that Babylon, Aeon, that completely, forever rearranged me. And, like, that to me is a very, like, deep lesson. That is, like, Carolyn, you were born in this body in the United States, speaking English with, the specific genetic heritage that you have that's been in relationship with a set of things, this set of things. And it was deep for me. I mean, I'm sure I would love to hear any reflections that you have concerning your ancestral relationship to the magic. And I mean, I guess it's a little bit different for everyone, but I remember actually here at Buffalo, I shouldn't say where we are. It's top secret where we are. Here at this beautiful campground, a few years ago, I was here for Halloween, and I did a spirit offering for my ancestors. And that night, Halloween night, I had a dream where my Italian ancestors appeared to me, and I was in this, like, beautiful, like, courtyard, hermetic. They had a giant spiral tower of a hermetic library. They were, like, these beautiful Italian Renaissance aristocrats, and this was all a big news flash to me, because all of the Italian relatives I've ever met are just, like, drunk Pittsburgh Steeler fan losers, bless them. I mean, you're not all losers. Sorry if you're listening to this.
Playing a different game.
You're doing other things that do not interest me. Anyways, I don't think they're listening to this. But my Italian, the ancestors I saw were hermeticists, and they were showing me, hermetic roses and all of this heraldry and all of it. And they were like, and after I had that dream, it became, like, very apparent to me, like, why the hermetic magic resonated so loudly, that there was this genetic inheritance that I had been completely unconscious of, that was completely veiled by, years of war and trauma and immigration and everything. But I feel like many people in Psalms have that experience, an electric yes, of, like, coming into contact with the hermetic magic and something really waking up in them. So I'm so curious to hear, what have you experienced in terms of dreams or visions or intuitions or?
Well, I definitely resonate with having your ancestry begin to wake up. That happened for me probably a little bit before I formally entered Psalms, but I was doing theurgy. And it became apparent to me that I needed to connect first with my late father, who passed away, and that his passing was sort of what started to open me up to there not being just physical reality. Because before then I was very much just like the stereotypical materialist, realist, scientist. And then stuff was happening after he passed. It was just like, I cannot explain this. So there must be something else. And then I felt the need to connect with his mother, and then on down his line. And that line goes back to Ireland. And there we have this big connection with the shamrock, with clover. I had a sort of meditation vision of my father's mother telling me I need to connect with red clover. And so I started drinking that as a tea, and that started to give me additional layers of insight. And yeah, there's just this sense of reconnecting the pieces that felt like they were amputated. And that typical, like, lack of connection to ancestry is another weird thing about Western people. And it actually does create this sort of disembodiedness that we actually feel the pain of, but we don't understand that it's a pain, and then it doesn't have to be that way.
Wow, that really resonates, like the general sort of, like, disassociation that many Westerners seem to have. I hadn't directly made that connection before, but it does make perfect sense that that's really connected to the lack of intimacy with ancestors. Sometimes I think about how, I think it was in the Middle Ages that the church, people used to bury their dead family members right under their house or in their yard or something. And the church made a law, like, no, you have to bury your dead in the churchyard. And just that law, like, created this like massive fracture in the psyches of people who no longer had that, land level intimacy with their dead. And obviously that persists right now. Like we have one of, like, in modern USA, and I'm guessing it's probably similar where you're living, that there's just such like the most schizophrenic relationship to death possible. Like it's the most like hidden, sanitized, distanced, weird thing.
Right. It's a life choice that people are choosing not to make. Right. Lifestyle choice that is not for me. There's not so much of that in Aotearoa, New Zealand, where I live, because we're a bicultural country, and so Te Ao Maori, the sort of worldview of the indigenous people there, they have a whole set of traditions around what they call tangihanga, which is the traditions around putting a member of the family to rest. And so there's more of that awareness of having space for grief and space for that transition. But at the same time, it kind of only lives within Te Ao Maori. And then the people who are not of that tradition, especially the people who've come from Europe, are still more in that, like, let's keep it behind closed doors because it's not polite.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that those folks were, I mean, like in the U.S., there's funeral parlors, there's just this whole, like somebody dies and then immediately, like somebody comes and carries them away, and as if it's like toxic waste. And it's just very intense. So that's something that you experienced, and so the coming alive with a connection with your Irish ancestors, and what so I'm also curious, like, what are your avenues of curiosity now, having experienced what you've experienced with us?
Well, I've done a fair bit of study of the sort of written reports and the sort of theory around these practices, both from the West and from the East. And they report some wild and crazy stuff, like some things that people apparently can do that look like superpowers. And if it's possible to experience superpowers, I would sure like to figure out if that's true. So I'm super curious about that. Like, I don't know that I'm going to develop the ability to, like, time travel other than the normal time traveling that we're all doing, or levitate or any bilocate or whatever, but like I would like to know what it is that people are experiencing when they're telling us about these perceptions. That I've always been profoundly curious about that.
Yeah. I know that I've mentioned to you, my husband David is super into the Taoist internal arts, which do have a big focus on cities and like being able to start fire with their hands. And the city that I most desire is teleportation.
That would be nice.
That is my top desire. I hate going on airplanes. I hate sitting in those cans in the sky, but I love being other places.
Yeah.
And are you familiar at all with Richard Rudd and the Gene Keys stuff?
A bit, yeah. I've looked at my profile, and I've read. So I would like draw a I Ching reading for the day, and then go look at what corresponding gene key was to try to understand what the energy was of the moment. And yeah, I think his work is very interesting. I don't think I really understand what he's saying much of the time, but I think it's cool.
It is cool, yeah. It's far out. There's, Layla and I have been really excited about it for a long time, and something that we're specifically excited and I'm very curious about is the whole 2027 thing. So, like, part of the Gene Keys prophecy for 2027 is that, and I guess this is in human design too, but I think Richard Rudd has a kind of different interpretation of it, that we're apparently, the planetary influences are changing so dramatically. I think it actually starts in 2026 with something called Barbeau's basket, which is a arrangement of the outer planets. I think there's actually some kind of trine happening. I need to figure this out more, but there's basically the idea is that there's, as Richard Rudd talks about it, there's going to be a massive influx of Siddhic energy, so that people who are already living their lives sort of at the level of expressing their gifts more than their shadows are going to receive sort of like a big up-leveling into those Siddhic realms. And part of, I was hadn't ever picked this up, although I've read the Gene Keys a lot, but I just was picking up reading the Gene Keys the other day, that he starts talking about the primary thing that's going to happen is the teleportation thing. Like, humans are going to...
Thank goodness, finally.
Finally. Like, consciousness, I guess, is going to become much more movable than it has been. And that's really... I really like that. I like the thought of it happening just spontaneously. That sounds so relaxing to me. But I've also found a lot of benefit from theurgical practices and there's so much rich fruitfulness to be found. Yeah. So, well, how was it for you having an encounter with Thelema and Aleister Crowley and all that stuff, the Babylon current?
I really appreciated how you framed Aleister Crowley in one of the episodes where you talk about Crowley and Jung as the Antichrist that Crowley described himself as or identified himself as, and then this sort of completing the Christ mandala in Ion. Because before that, I was more in the popular narrative of like, oh, he's terrible and we have to reject him, we have to cancel him. And now I see more of the potential for his being a beacon of another stream of thought that maybe hadn't been allowed out into the light of day. And then so bringing up more of that possibility of taking all of those parts of me that were not allowed up into the light of day, which included the will to power and the will to acknowledge the fact that my ego would like to have a comfortable life and do things to make that comfortable life happen, which was before something that I was not allowed to admit.
I'm so curious, was that feeling of like, I'm not allowed to admit this, do you think that came from religious training, or how did that idea get in?
I was raised as a Catholic, so there's certainly that like aesthetic of doing without and not asking for more that was baked in. And then also I grew up in the Midwest in a small town where it's also sort of like you just work really hard and you just take enough and you don't go beyond that. So I feel like that is not the sort of like, it seemed very much obvious that was the only way life could be. And it doesn't seem like that's the only story anymore.
I like the way you put that it seemed very obvious that that's the only way that life could be, and now it doesn't seem that way anymore. That's one of the things that I find so interesting about, like when people talk about beliefs or working on changing beliefs, it's like, if I'm really believing something, I don't even fucking know that I'm believing it.
Right.
It just seems like the way things are.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I find out, when I first got into magic, I was very focused on like, results magic. Like, so, I'm going to get this specific amount of money, get this specific thing to happen. And like more and more, I've become so enchanted with theurgy and mystery because I'm like, I definitely enjoy the possibility to make specific things happen with sorcery. It's really cool. I should probably get back into it a little bit. But like, I love it how theurgy moves things for me that I did not know that I needed moved, that I was completely unconscious of, completely thought that's just the way it is. And and that's something that's so awe-inspiring for me with magic and the kind of group ritual that we do in Psalms is, it works at the level of metaphor and it works at the level of analogy, and it speaks the language of dreams and the language of the unconscious, and the unconscious receives what happens and it's like, oh, I'm going to do things with this, and it moves stuff around, and I'm like, what? How did that move around? I didn't even know that needed to move. And it's really fun. Yes. Yeah, and I'm glad that reframing of Aleister Crowley vibed with you, because I remember growing up, I had a very similar experience with him where there was a Thelema occult shop the main strip where I hung out as a teenager, which is a very weird thing for there to be, by the way. There's not like specific, it was like a specific...
It's meant to be.
Yes, so there was a specifically Thelemite occult shop that had like pictures of Aleister Crowley and pictures of the Stele of Revealing, and it was completely dark except for some black light in there. It was like creepy AF, and I would go in there to buy peacock feathers and incense, but I was always...
The things that were okay.
The things that were okay. But I would, like, go in there and I would, like, pick up a book and I would, like, read a few lines of, like, his weird fucking poetry, and I would be like, who is this creepy-ass dude? Why is there a whole store dedicated to him? He seems like an asshole. And, like... and so, anyways, I totally get it when people are like, I want nothing to do with that. And also, there's been this astounding alchemical joy and freedom that came for me by engaging with it. So it's always fun for me when I get people to like come into this web of extreme weirdness.
Yes, come on to the dark side. We have cookies.
Yes, we do. Oh, we have baller cookies.
Yeah, and really good hugs.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah. And so, Rita, you were also telling me that you made the decision to join our new program at the Immortal College, which is the Red Work. And for folks who don't know, it's open right now for registration until September 29th, 2024. And then I guess it might reopen in another 6 months or 12 months. I don't know exactly what the plan is. But we're offering to teach people how to create platforms and create audiences and online businesses. And we're calling it the Red Work because we at the Immortal College have found that we've had to do an immense amount of alchemical inner work to do this teaching and public presence stuff in such a way that doesn't degrade our souls, but rather opens us up. Because there's definitely ways to do it that degrade one's soul. And I have experimented with those ways, and I've seen others completely destroyed by those ways. And it ain't pretty. So, but this Red Work way is basically a way of like increasingly like a deepening level of making the unconscious conscious out loud and in public and through it can be very sensational, and it's a big adventure. And anyways, Rita, I was just curious, what made you come into this weird fucking thing?
Right, so I already made a very large monetary investment to be in Psalms this year.
Yeah.
And then this came out and I was just like, oh no, I'm going to have to do this too. Because it really, it seemed like, okay, that is the next step. I have for a number of years been trying to get more of my expertise out into the world, partly because there's an issue of not being able to find the proper fit if I'm only relying upon my employer to publicize me, for lack of a better word. And there's also this sort of like, as you receive a transmission, it has to be transmitted again. Like I have to become not just the receiver, but the transmitter. And I haven't been able to pierce through the parts of my psyche that are so just like fundamentally embarrassed of being who I am, to let other people see what that is in a way that would be magnetic and appealing and, God forbid, give me more money. And so I thought, well, I genuinely need a little bit of hand-holding around this. Plus, I know that whatever happened with Psalms has opened up so much that this next step is going to open up something else as well. I can't say that I necessarily believe that it's going to be that I'm going to have this like thriving online business afterwards, but I do feel like I am likely to have more comfort being open about who I am, and something else wild and weird and wonderful will probably emerge along the way. So yeah.
Well, I love that attitude. Wild and weird and wonderful can definitely 1000% happen. I hope you haven't totally written off the possibility of a thriving online business.
I haven't,
because
it's open. I'm just like, I have tried so hard in the past, and I've failed so miserably, and I'm just sort of like, maybe I'm just not cut out for an online business, which maybe would mean that I'm the ideal candidate for this this container, because it's meant to move those beliefs, because that is a belief.
It's a belief. It is. Well, yeah. So it's, how do I say? I guess I have seen I've seen other folks in similar positions as you who have told me that they've been trying to create online businesses, that they like can't fucking do it. They've been, teaching in institutions, universities, and they know they have, something beautiful. They know they have like something potent to give, and just were not able to do it. And then just with some rearrangements and the channel opens, and it's like when shit opens it goes it can just I'm thinking right now of Camellia Elias, who was one of my coaching clients way back in the day, and she's famous now for her tarot course called Read Like the Devil, and she teaches a very like potent kind of what's it cartomantic style of divination that and that's very different than, I guess, like the Golden Dawn style of tarot reading. And she's an expert in this. And anyways, I just remember talking to her about it years ago, and she was telling me about all of these academic research papers that she had written about the tarot. And I was like, Camellia, you can make a fuck ton of money online by teaching tarot courses. And she was just like, oh, well, she had all of these things. And anyways, it's so interesting because it's like sometimes I think about like my mentor, Dr. Robert, teaches this pyramid that's very connected with Hermetic stuff, which is, I don't know if it's a pyramid exactly, but anyways, at the bottom there's actions and effects in the world. And then there's, thoughts and feelings, and then there's beliefs, and then there's identity, and then there's, soul and spirit. And I guess what I witnessed with Camellia is through the coaching that we did, she had an identity level change. And once that identity level changed, it's like everything changed very quickly below. And and it's not like, anyways, obviously with somebody like yourself or like Camellia who is skilled at teaching and writing and communicating, it is just sort of like a different angle of teaching and writing and communicating. There's definitely people out there in the world who don't have any writing and teaching skills and probably could not have such a rapid transformation. But anyways, I see possibilities, Rita, and I don't want to, I think having modest expectations is great because that always leaves the room for wonderful surprises. Right. But I'm just saying I see the possibility for the wonderful surprise.
Wonderful.
And,
well, and also I recently watched one of the Netflix documentaries about another one of the sort of internet groups who
a naughty internet
group not this naughty internet group, but a different one that were clearly using certain sort of psychological control techniques, and I just I can't help but have the thought that if I only was just a little bit less moral, a little bit less ethical, there's just so much money to be made, and I just can't allow myself to be that terrible in the world and get all of that dough, because I don't want to turn people into slaves or take advantage of their pain. But I think there's probably other ways to make money besides doing that. So
I hear you. So yeah, I definitely understand how one could watch one of those Netflix documentaries and see those. And you know what? Okay, I just want to say this. When I saw how much of a phenomenon the twin flame shit was in 2016, and I could see that, I could see that everybody was obsessed with talking about their twin flame and my twin flame, blah 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 blah. The thought came into my mind, and the thought said this to me, the evil devil thought. Thought said, Carolyn, you could make so much money by offering people a course on how to get their twin flame. And I saw the mountains of cash that could flow in, because it was very readily apparent in 2016 on Facebook how many, mostly women there were who were fucking crazy and willing to do anything, pay anything, go anywhere to get whatever guy they were obsessed with. And anyway, so I had that thought, but then my next thought was, but all of that twin flame shit is complete nonsense. So
I can't playing upon trauma of various forms.
Deeply. And so I was honest with myself, and I was what I care about a lot, I love money. What I care about even more than money is I love seeing people come into their own power, their own blossoming, their own real freedom. And I know that from my fancy education, I know that the twin flame stuff comes from a section in the symposium, Plato's Symposium, where Aristophanes is talking. Aristophanes, who is the comedian famous for writing plays about people fucking donkeys. The twin flames thing was considered a joke on par with, like, politicians in Athens fucking donkeys. So I knew that in my heart. And anyways, that kept me from going down that route and kept me teaching stuff that I believed would be more freeing and empowering for people. But I guess I just want to say, Rita, I mean, and for anybody listening out there who's thinking about working an online business platform or joining us in the Red Work or any such thing, is that I have learned in the journey that flourishing an online business does involve doing things that my early Catholic upbringing told me was evil. Things like being honest about who I am and enjoying my life and all sorts of stuff like that. And
and wanting people to pay you for your work.
And wanting people to pay me for my work, all of those things.
How dare you?
Very, very bad. But, and it is certainly true that I've seen people like those twin flame cults rake in cash by being, like, super unethical. And I don't even know, I don't know, those people might have completely believed in the stuff that they were teaching, so they might, they're probably some mixture of diluted and unethical.
The most generous interpretation is that they actually believe what they're saying, and also they're really keen on getting a lot of stuff.
Yes. So some mix, some, yeah. So there's always, there is that. And I do think, and I was talking to folks about this last night, that, I would say an ethical way to make money is by trading things of equal value or approximate value. So, like, there's a certain way in which I feel like one of the things that Electric Yes and Psalms does and that Red Work does is it gives, and basically all of the offerings at the Immortal College, for people who are the right fit for them, we provide a context and a set of tools and a set of basically attitudes, and that we will hold people in through coaching and various experiences that produce a level, a transformation, a change that is commensurate with the value in money that we have been paid. And it's, so there's I guess what am I trying to say here? I think that the hunger and the demand for real transformation and for real, like, stumbling over words a little bit here, but, like, there is a widespread recognition that it is a valuable service to facilitate a deep change.
That goes back to stuff we talked about earlier through our lovely friends with the motorcycles. That there's, like, this hungry ghost of people who are looking for this numinous experience, this connectedness to the rest of the universe, but they don't know where to get it, and they don't know how to even ask for it. And that comes alongside this idea, which is sort of like the old aeon, like, you have to give it away for free. You can't ever ask for money for what you're doing. Whereas now there's this new energy that's at play where we're having more of this opportunity to step up rather than having other people do things for us. Like the guru did it for us before, or, Jesus did it all, so that way it's done and dusted. We're being asked to take up more of our own responsibility. And at the same time, being self-responsible means also, showing up. And I know the difference between free containers or low-price containers that I've been in versus something like Psalms, where it's like, I felt that money leave my bank account. And there's a certain level of, like, you show up more. And I can see that in my students at the university. Like, the more they think that university should be free, the less they don't show up. Because it's just something that they get to have, and they don't even know why they're there. And so there's something that happens when money changes hands that makes it more real.
Yeah, there's 1000% a portal that opens, and it is, it's a portal of intimacy. And there are challenges, I find, with that intimacy. And I think it's a form of tantric practice, just like sexual intimacy offers a form of tantric practice, because it's the same levels of intensity come up. And in fact, I was thinking, Rita, about an experience that you had where I was thinking about, I'll just speak from my end. I made an announcement that I wasn't going to be an Electric Yes anymore because I needed a break from online things and I was going to focus on Psalms. And then I had an inspiration. Inspiration seized me to do Battle Magic, which is another online program. And I announced Battle Magic, and I wasn't at the first somatic integration call for Psalms. And I don't know if you feel like speaking to what that experience, what that brought up for you.
I had a delicious florid hallucination around the whole situation, which included a little bit of being possessed by Nemesis and like wanting things to be made just and right and balanced. And it occurred to me that I thought that I was paying for one thing and getting another thing. So I just had my own fun little journey of digging through that little knot in my psyche. But it just, I, on the one hand, felt that cheekiness to just be like, well, I guess I'll just ask for a thing and see if I get the thing. And then also having this awareness of like, I have this addiction to giving other people my power, which I see being activated right now. And maybe I don't need to do that. I don't need to buy more snake oil, even if the snake oil is actually an effective cure. I can actually just like sit with what's present here and let this pass through.
Yeah, I'm glad that you marinated in the snake oil that you bought. And I guess what I was just thinking about with that experience is how it's like, because I was delighted by that experience, and I'm delighted that you told me about it, and we had the exchange that we had surrounding it, because I do find with online business and with things is like, when I do things, even to the best of like my inner ethical standards, inevitably I will do things that rub up against, other people's feelings about how things should be and how, various folks' perceptions of me, and then the tragic realities of my human, failings from that. And so it's like, it is it doesn't stop being a sensational journey. Like, It doesn't stop being like, I don't know. Some people have more inner freedom around it than me. Like Layla, when anybody is disappointed with Layla, like, she has nothing but orgasms about that. Like, that is a pure orgasmic experience for her. I'm not at that level of enlightenment yet. I'm still striving to reach it. But, when I feel like I've disappointed someone, I'm like, oh no, it's happening again.
Yeah, we gave you a lot of that juice, didn't we?
Yes, you did. Because reality is so generous and kind and gives me exactly what I want. Exactly. So, man, now that's deep. I got to meditate on that some more, Rita. But,
You're welcome.
I guess what I'm just trying to say is that something is always being violated. Like, I think that it is a true intuition that in order to be in the space where you are teaching spiritual or deep transformative things, and you are making money, and you are doing it out loud in public, and people are emptying their bank accounts temporarily in exchange for an experience that you're creating, even when it's all as up and up and up as one can possibly make it, and as free and empowering and not a weird mind control. I mean, I don't want to talk too much shit on mind control, but
it's a valid game. It's not one I want to play.
It's not one I want to play. I don't want to. Those weird, the twin flame cults.
Not for me.
Not for me. There's still folks have experiences of violation. And
really, you can't control that. Like, there's 0% that you can control of other people's opinions, positive or negative, feelings, positive or negative. And this is I first learned this in yoga, and it just keeps getting deeper and deeper through theurgy and through the ways that these containers that you create in the Immortal College encourage and expand window of capacity to hold that charge and be okay with it. Is just that you can't control those things. So stop trying to control the uncontrollable. People are going to have their dream. Let them have their dream.
Yes, precisely. Well said. And that's why, and it's so fun because like we can say it quite simply, and then living it out and doing it that's the alchemy. Yep. And that's really, one of the reasons why I'm excited to be offering red work, and why David and Lucy, who are doing it too, is because, we have found that it is possible. Like, we can be really in like this deep artistic and spiritual alignment with our purpose and like making a living that way. And it is like such a relentless alchemical crucible of like always bringing into laser crystal crisp clear attention the things that still need to be changed. Like, there's no, like, I'm never able to delude myself that I have it all figured out, because there's always like spicy things to be worked on. And anyways, I guess like I'm so excited that you're going to be there, and I'm excited for other people listening who are thinking about signing up, or who are signing up for red work, because like rubedo, the fulfillment, the reddening of the stone, the reaching of this like ripe place of wholeness, like in one sense it is something that like is cyclical. Like we reach the red stage, and then we need another dying black stage, and another whitening purification, and then another red stage. And in one sense, I'm like 1000% not a perfect person, and I do feel like my soul in general has come to a place of redness and a place of ripeness, where even when I'm in a blackening phase and something is dying and something is really painful, there's like this exquisiteness to it of like, wow, I can feel the larger beauty surrounding this. And that beauty, I'm reminded, it's really fun because there's so many connections, but like in the North American like Lakota path, they call it the Red Road, and they also call it the Beauty Way.
Right.
And I think they are, naming the same thing that the Western alchemical tradition is naming when it says rubedo, or the red work, which is, it's this beauty. It's like this unleashment of, beauty, and the rose blooming on the cross. And that is, that's another thing that online business and audience stuff definitely feels a lot. And every profession where one is being anything other than the Unabomber, basically, I think feels like a crucifixion. Like, unless you're a complete hermit, and he was being crucified in his own way, bless him. But like,
we've all got something to complain about.
We've all got our cross. And it can be very, like I think Jung talked about how consciousness grows in a human being by human beings having conflicts that they cannot resolve. That like, conflicts of duty, conflicts of conscience, like it's not like a choice between good and evil, it's a choice between two things that seem to have an equal claim of rightness. And like, how does one make that choice? And so it feels like being tortured as trying to be ethical and trying to make a living doing far out spiritual shit at the same time, trying to be loved by all and being human and not being able to. And like, it's really, it's a fun crucifixion trip.
And it seems to me like a fun crucifixion trip that I don't have the capacity right now to go on by myself. So I'm happy to have this container to have my hand held and be like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You're going to survive. It's okay.
That is a wise choice. I was going to, one of our initiates offered this morning exercise thing, and he's really cool. He does like 100 burpees every morning, and it's part of his magical practice. And so he was offering that, leading that for other initiates here, and I was going, and I cannot do 100 burpees, but I did exponentially more burpees this weekend than I've done by myself for the last year. And anyways, just when you said that, Rita, I was like, I fucking need exercise containers. I need my hand held for that. I need people to be around me in a circle and be like, we're doing this right now.
Because the painful stuff is really hard to do when you're the only one who's keeping you accountable.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's the same thing with stretching in this way with like online business and public writing and creativity is I think you are absolutely right that like giving yourself the gift of that support in a group container is a wonderful thing to give oneself, because we humans need to be held in that feeling of confidence and that feeling of like, it's okay to be like I was being held in the exercise circle this morning. Like, it's okay, you can't do 100 burpees, Carolyn. We're happy you're here. You're doing it. You're doing more than you would be if you were out in the wilderness alone. And that is some of the beauty of containers like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Rita. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Just that this has been a crazy, wonderful, wild ride. And again, like, most of the things that I thought would happen haven't happened, which is why I'm letting that prediction go away and just like allowing the unfolding. So thank you for facilitating the unfolding.
Yay! Thank you, Rita. All right, everybody. So that's a wrap for today. Please like, follow, share, tell your friends about Sleepover Podcast. Sleepover Mystery School, it looks like we're going to be on hiatus for 1 year, but we will be starting up again in 2026. And of course, we'll have more podcast episodes for you. And Red Work is an online offering that we have, which is really a complete education in online business and a deep alchemical crucible. And you can go to theimmortalcollege.com/red-work to learn more about it and sign up. Okay, bye-bye.